mutation, disasters for that protein, but a very local mutation, or even much more subtle here, a point mutation, just one letter being different. And we could run with that one already back to our simple dogma. DNA determines RNA determines protein determines sequence determines shape function, and this is going to be a protein that functions differently. Now you could have made a typo with your point mutation and had a different letter now in your genetic sequence and changed from now to not. That's a big one. The word not means something very different from the word now, and it changes the entire message. You could have inadvertently made your local little point mutation and coded for a different amino acid that almost has the same shape as the original one. And as a result, the protein has a slightly different shape and a slightly different function, or you can have your massive point mutation from I will now to I will not, and that one is consequential. So it's not only that you've made a mistake with the amino acid that you code for, but which particular one, how does that change the function? And it's right at that point that we introduce our step number 3 in our Darwinian sequence, a trait that has a genetic component, a source of variability, and at that point, natural selection, Darwin's major contribution, takes over. You have a different version of that protein than the rest of the kids on your block. Is that more advantageous to you? More advantageous. What was the term that came out of Darwin, which, by the way, Darwin never once said? This was social Darwinism a few generations later. Survival of the fittest. We now know that's nonsense from the last 4 lectures. It's not survival of the fittest, it's reproduction of the fittest, passing on copies of the genes. Another sort of caveat there, Darwin did not invent the concept of evolution, that species change over time. That had been around for a long time before that. He came up with the notion that how do they change? Natural selection. So natural selection at that Darwinian level, and our last 3 lectures of the evolution of this aspect of sociality or cooperativity, whatever, how does natural selection now play out on the level of these proteins and genes and all these little reductive nuts and bolts we've been looking at? And here we see an example of it. We've got some cell with a receptor, and we can easily imagine it being one of our neurons and a receptor for a neurotransmitter or a hormone, and we've got the receptor and the messenger, the neurotransmitter hormone, fitting in there ad nauseum, the key fitting into the lock, and you've got the sort of thing that biochemists pay attention to at this point, which is how well does that messenger fit into the receptor? How long does it stay in there before it comes floating off? Remember that neurotransmitter lecture, after it floats off, you can recycle it, you can break it down. Prerequisite of those pathways is it floats off. The receptor has a certain affinity with the messenger. It holds on to it for a certain length of time. And the shape of the receptor determines how long it holds